and also we will do at least one lab today. Okay, so today we'll look into the JavaScript events. And what are events? Events are the like trigger points where you can carry out a certain actions. For example, like any click event or any event related to the keyboard. According to that, you can include some kind of a action, and that particular action is like it could be for validation or getting more data. For example, one kind of a event, suppose if you have a field like a state. Okay, you have a field drop down like a country, then you have state and then city. So what you can do is like you can put an event on the first input control, and we will see different events. You can select such events. Once the state is selected, then automatically you can run a JavaScript and preload the state. Okay, depending upon what country you are going to preload the state, and depending upon what value is selected for the state, you can then load the city. So that is one example. So events are useful, and it based on the what kind of application you are developing, what is your requirement, you can use the different kinds of event. JavaScript event is an action that can be detected by the JavaScript. We say that the event is triggered and then it can be caught by JavaScript functions, which then do something in response. So we events they trigger something, and those triggers using the handlers it can be caught, and whatever the response you want to give, you can give the response. In the original JavaScript word, event could be specified right in the HTML markup with hooks to the JavaScript code. Earlier, how it was done was like you will have whatever the events you want to specify, you will specify that in the HTML markup, and you will provide hooks, means some kind of a mechanism to call the JavaScript to handle that particular event. And the modern way of usage is using the listener approach. So you will be having listeners. The listeners will be listening to the different kinds of events. Whenever that events occur, listener will listen that, and appropriate action will be taken by the handler. Whichever the response you want to give, that can be written in the handler. For in the last class we saw one example where we changed the style of an particular element. We use this methodology. I will show you the example again. What we in this particular example, what we do, we specify the what kind of a event in the HTML itself, and that whenever that event occurs, you are going to call some JavaScript code which will take some kind of a action. I will show you the example. Okay, this is the example we saw yesterday. First, I will show you the page, then we'll talk about the code. This is 6 DOM 8. Okay, this is that particular HTML. So this is the HTML which is loading. This is one div. Inside that 2 paragraphs are there. Another div, 2 paragraphs are there. I have a button, and based on certain event, when I click here, okay, what will happen? This is some alert I have produced. So on the click event, I am changing the background color of div, and I am changing the border style. How it is done? So this is the HTML page we have. This is the first div, right? This is the first div, which is now with a background of yellow color, and this is the second div, and I have one button, and inside this button I am using on click. On click is the one kind of a event. I am using on click, and when on click, when the click event happens, on click, it is going to call this particular method, okay, JavaScript function. and that JavaScript function is change div. And what it will do, change div, you can see I am getting the object here, latest comment, document dot get element by id, whichever is having the id called latest comment, that object reference will be assigned to this variable latest, and which is having that id, you can see this particular div, this particular div is having the id as latest comment. Once I get the reference to that, okay, latest, in the old message I am storing latest dot inner html. Yesterday we looked into what is inner html. Whatever element you have selected, whatever the html is there, that html will be assigned to this particular variable. So what html we have, two elements are there. This is a one paragraph, another two paragraph. That value will be assigned to the old message. Then I am changing the message, new message is equal to old message, plus I am adding some kind of a string here. Then I am changing the style. So latest dot style dot background color I am changing, latest style dot border. So border includes a green solid 3 pixel. This doesn't make any sense because we are already set the width. I am changing the background color, latest dot style dot background color, latest dot style dot border. So green color border, a solid line, and width is 3 pixel. And whatever is in the latest dot inner html, that will be displayed. That is what happens. I will save and just I will refresh. Now this is the normal html without the it shows this division. Okay, it is showing this div, then there is a horizontal line, this div. Okay, you can see this div, after that there is a horizontal line, and after that there is a button, right? Once I click on the button, once I click on the button, on click, this method is called. And what this method will do, it will change the background color and the, so on click, when I click on this button, okay, when I made a click, this method is called, which method is called change div. Then control will come to that particular method, so it will make all these changes at the end, latest dot inner html. So this inner html property, what it will show, whatever is inside the div. So you can see the first paragraph and the second paragraph. Once I say okay, then it is, you can comment it out if you don't want. Okay, I will just comment it and I will reload. Okay, I removed that comment. Now I will rerun. Once I click on click, this border background will change. So on click, border, the background will change. So that is the first kind of a method. Second one is the listener. We implement the listeners. So it gives a separation of the code. What is the advantage of the listener? What is the disadvantage of the first style is, whatever I showed, we are mixing the HTML and the JavaScript. So we can segregate using the listener. This is the example of the whole technique. You can see here, I'm including the JavaScript file, and inside this JavaScript file, I have all the JavaScript function. You can see for the form, there is a particular event called as on submit. On submit, it will call the validate, and it will pass this object, means whatever is the current object, that object is passed, and it will call the that particular function. Similarly, there are three inputs. Each of those inputs, they have different kind of a event. This one has a on hover, some type of a action. However, this on focus, focus this. So we are calling different functions based on the different. On hover is a one event, on focus is a another event. This is a submit button. On click, on click, you just saw the example on click. So when you are making a mouse click on any element, that particular event will be triggered for that particular element. So here in this case, In the example we saw, I had included that for the button, which I had the custom button, and I included the on click event, and on click event I called some kind of a method. So this is the technique. It is inline technique. Second is the new layered listener technique. You have the JavaScript, but you can see here clear separation between the HTML document and the JavaScript. Inside the JavaScript code, I will have all the whatever is related to the listener that will be implemented. How to do that? We'll see it in the next slide. Inline, already we saw the one example. This is another example. Division id is given as example 1. On click, whenever you click on that particular division, a pop-up message is shown, and with a text hello. That is what this example is. Next is a listener approach. It can be done in two different ways. First way is you create a variable. Here example, greeting box is equal to document dot get element by id example 1. So it will get the element object which has a id example 1. Once you have that object, that object dot on click, so it has a dot on click. You will use that dot on click is equal to whatever if you want to call the method, you will specify the method. In this particular example, it is just a one pop-up message is used with a good morning message. That is how the implementation is done for the listener here. Same thing, and all this code is in the JavaScript file, so it is not in the HTML document. The another way is to do is add event listener. So add event listener is the a method using which we can bind the event and the what action you want to take. Similarly, you can say another variable is declared document dot get element by id. It will get a object which has element object which has a id example 1. Once you have that object, then you will call that object greeting box dot add event listener, and you will specify what event. So here is the click event. Click comma, this is the event, comma, what you want to do, whether you want to call a function or you want to just pop up a message. So here it is just a pop-up message is used. You can add as many as a distinct events for a particular element. In for this particular element, they have added two event listener. One is for the click and another is for the mouse out. Mouse out is what? Whenever the cursor of the mouse goes outside the div, this will be triggered. Mouse out will be triggered. When this is triggered, it will carry out this action. What action? Alert goodbye. Just one message will come saying goodbye. And in older version, there is IE8 and older, we can use dot attach event. Okay, it is same approach for the listener, providing a listener. Only method is different. Greeting box dot attach event. You will specify the what event and what action you want to take. So this is the what if we wanted to do something more elaborate when an event is triggered. In such case, the behavior would have to be encapsulated within a function as shown in the listing 6.12. So instead of just uh, calling the alert function, you can specify the method, which we already saw. You can see the example here. Element variable element is equal to document dot get element by id example 1. It will get the object of that div element, and element dot on click. So you are binding the to the on click event is equal to this method display the date. So what it will do, it will call this method. What is this method? We are creating a new object of a date d, and then we are displaying the whatever the string value of the date as a pop-up message. You clicked this on, a particular date will come. This is the first way of doing it. Second approach is event the same, whatever the element I had, element dot add event listener, then event click, and function display the date. So it will call whenever there is a click, it will automatically call this particular method. and alternate to the 6.2 listing to use anonymous function. So another way of doing it is, if you don't want to give the name of the function, you can incorporate one anonymous function. Anonymous function is the function which doesn't have a name. You will provide the implementation there itself. Here is the example. Element, you have the variable is equal to document dot get element by id. It will get this div element. Once you have the div element object, element dot on click is equal to direct function implementation. You will say function with empty curly braces, and inside the empty brackets, and inside the curly braces you will implement the function. So what we are doing, same thing whatever was done in the earlier example, creating a new date object and displaying its string value. Event object. So no matter which type of event we encounter, they are all DOM event objects. So whatever the, whether it is a on click, on hover, on focus, whatever the kind of a event we have, all are a DOM event objects, and event handlers associated with them can access and manipulate them. Typically we see the events passed to the function handler as a parameter named e. So all these are the event objects, and event objects you can pass it to the whoever is handling. In our example we saw, we created few functions. You can pass those elements to those functions. How you will do that? Function, that is the keyword space function name, and you pass this event, and inside the implementation, that is curly braces, you will use that particular event the way you want to use it. Once bubbles is a property, bubbles is a property is set to true, there must be an event handler in this in place to handle the event, or it will bubble up to the parent and trigger an event handler. So whenever you are bubbles, that property is set to true, and there must be the event handler. If there is any event that is bound to that particular element, you must implement the event handler. If event handler is not present there, then it will bubble up to the parent, so it will trigger the parent event handler. Cancelable, the cancelable property is also boolean value true or false, and it indicates whether or not an event can be cancelled. So if you want to cancel particular event, you can use this particular property. And sometimes what happens, by default the cancelable is set as true, and if you don't want to do that, you can set the prevent default. A cancelable default action for an event can be stopped using the prevent default method. So that we will see in the next slide. So this is how you can do. Suppose you are doing some kind of a validation. Suppose on submit, on submit event, and before submitting the form, you want to do some kind of a validation. You want to check some fields, whether it is number, some fields are proper text or not, or some fields with a regular expression. Then you can you will write a JavaScript to validate. And if the validation fails, we don't want to cancel that particular event. That time what you can do is, if e dot cancelable, if for this particular event the cancelable property is true, then you will call the e dot prevent default. So it will like it will not make that cancelable as the true. What are the different types of events we have? We have mouse events, keyboard events, form events, and frame events. Those are the different types of events. All the events that are related to the mouse are grouped in mouse events. All the events that are related to the keyboard and form events are the all the events related to the form you have which you have developed. Frame, all the events that is related to the frame. Basically you show the HTML document inside the frame. So the window of display, that is the frame, and it has a few properties, a few events that we will see. For mouse, we have on click. Whenever you do the click, that this particular event is triggered. When on the mouse, when you do the click, this particular on click event is triggered. When you do double click on the mouse, on double click on mouse down, so the mouse whenever you are clicking the mouse, When you completely click down the mouse, this event will be triggered, and when you release that on mouse up, this particular event will be triggered on mouse over. The mouse was moved over the element. So when over the element, when you move the mouse, this particular event will be triggered on mouse out. When you move out of that particular element, suppose you are in the div, when you move out of that particular element, then you will see the mouse on mouse out, that particular event will be triggered. On mouse move, inside that element, if you are moving the mouse within the element, this particular event will be triggered. Keyboard has three events. So when you press the button, you press it, okay, press down, then you release it. That is the press down is the first event. When you release, that is the second event. When both are done, that is the third event. So on key down, the user pressing the key, that is the first action. On key down, event is triggered. When you release it, user releases the key that was down, that is on key up. So that those are the two events. Then on key press, the user presses a key, so he presses the key. This happens after the key down, right? Once the key down, okay, then it is pressed, and then it is released. Those are the three events we can have on every button. So, and yeah, there are attributes. You can read what kind of a key is pressed based on the event object. It has a properties. You can understand what key is pressed, and appropriate action can be taken. Here is the example. We have a one input text, which takes a text, and its ID is a key example. The input box above, for example, could be listened to. Each key pressed echoed back to the user as an alert. So this example will show whatever user presses the buttons, right? He presses A, it is echoed back with the alert saying A is pressed. When he presses B, it is echoed back with the alert message B is pressed, so on. How to do that? First one is, you will first you will get the that particular element. Which is that element? Where I want to listen, the key press is on this particular input control. On this input control, I want to have a on key down event. That is what I want to listen, and I want to take an action for that. First I will get the element by ID. I will get the this particular element object. ID is key example. Document dot get element by ID, key example is the ID. So I get the this object of this particular input dot on key down. Whenever there is a key down is done, so this particular event happens, is equal to function, my function, the event object is passed, variable key pressed is equal to e dot key code. So you have the whichever the button is pressed, it has the key code. That key code is stored in the key pressed, and this would be some kind of a code. It depends on what kind of a encoding is used, and we have to decode in order to convert it to a string. How to do that? We will have another variable string dot from char code. So inside the string object, we have from char code. We can convert that code into a string and pass this particular code. Key pressed, it will convert it to a string. Then you will use an alert pop-up message. Key, whatever is pressed, was pressed. That is what will be displayed. If user presses letter B, key B was pressed. That is what you will see it. We have one example for that. Okay. This is the example. First, we will see the HTML and then we will discuss. Okay, this is the HTML document I have. So what I have one paragraph with some text, another paragraph with some text. These are the first two paragraphs. Then I have a input control, type text, and ID is given as a demo. That is what is the simple. There are three elements. That's all. Then I have the JavaScript here. Inside the JavaScript, document dot get element ID demo. Okay, it will get the this element object, this input control element object dot on key down is equal to a function, and the name of the function is my function. On key down, whenever the key is pressed, it is going to call this particular method, and inside that method what we have done, function my function document dot get element ID demo, that is it will get this particular element dot style, we are changing the style dot background color red. So if I press any key here, I am pressing K. Okay, when I press K, what happened, the key down, so on key down, that particular event got triggered. When this event got triggered, it called this function my function, and inside the function what we are doing, we are changing the background color to red. So I will show 1 second, just I will refresh. This is how it will be. When I press any kind of a button using keyboard, I press the letter P, so immediately will change see the background is changed. Next are the form events. There are different kinds of form events we have. On blur, a form element has lost focus, that is the control has moved to a different element, perhaps due to a click or a tab key press. So on blur means the focus on that particular form element has moved to some other place, means it is not on focus. We have on focus. These two are exactly opposite. Here you can see on focus complementing the on blur event. This is triggered when an element gets the focus. What is getting the focus? When you take your cursor and point it at a particular element, that is when it gets a focus. That is one way of doing it. Another way is you can use the tab. So using tab you can move to the next element. That is how the element will get the focus. On change, some input text area select field had their value change. This could mean that user typed something or selected a new choice. So on change, certain input, they are taking the user inputs. Whenever there is a change, this particular value will be triggered. I give one example. Let's say user selects a country, India, then you populate the next control, next select with the the states that are present in India. Let us say user goes back and changes from India to USA, then you can on change. When the value is changed from India to USA, this particular event is triggered. For that event, what you can do is you can find again run the query, you can find what are the states that are present in USA and populate the state select or the list of values you have, you can change. That is how you can use the on change event. On reset, HTML forms have the ability to be reset. The event is triggered when that happens. Whenever you do the reset, this event is triggered. On select, when the user selects some text, this often used to try to prevent the copy and paste. On select, whenever user selects some text, this on select will be event is clicked. So what you can do, if there is a control C or the copy, you can stop using the on select. On submit, when the form is submitted, this event is triggered. We can do some pre-validation when the user submits the form in JavaScript before sending the data onto the server. So on submit, when form is getting submitted, when form is submitted, this event will get triggered. If you want to do some kind of a validation, you can do those kind of a validation. This is an example for the on submit document dot get element by ID login form. It is some kind of a login form. This is the name. This is the ID given to that particular form. So it is getting by the ID, whichever the form object which has the ID login form, we get that particular element object, form object. On top of that, you are calling dot on submit. What to do? You call function. Okay, this is the anonymous function. You are passing the event variable pass is equal to document dot get element by ID. Let us say there is a password input control with the ID pw. You will get the value of that. Okay, so not the value you will get until this document dot get element by ID pw. Until this, what it will do, it will get the object which has the ID pw, and dot value, whatever is the value inside that object, is assigned to pass variable. And you can make sure that password is not empty. If pass is equal to empty, alert, enter a password. So using this particular method, before submitting, you are making sure that the password, proper password, is given, it is not empty. And we are calling the e dot prevent default to make sure that the cancelable property, if it is true, the event is not cancelled. Frame events, similarly, frame events are the events related to the browser frame that contains your web page. The most important event is the onload event. When a particular HTML document is loaded onto the frame, this event is unload event is triggered, which tells us an object is loaded and therefore ready to work with. If code attempts to set up a listener on this not yet loaded div, then error will be triggered. So why unload is important is, if you are trying to set some kind of a listener on the object which is not yet loaded, you will get some kind of a error. You can make sure you can use the window dot load onload and make sure all the JavaScript initialization is done. So that is how you can utilize this particular event, onload event. What are the different other events we have? On abort, object was stopped from loading. A particular object, it gets, due to some reason, it gets stopped loading. That time on abort event will be triggered. So you can come to know by writing on about event, if there is any object that gets failed to load, you will know what action to be taken. Similarly, on error, an object or an image did not properly load. So first case is the stopped from loading. Second case is it did not load properly, so it's partial. In that case, you can take the appropriate action. On load, we just looked into when a document or the object has been loaded. On resize, when you resize the document, when you resize the browser in window, this particular event will be triggered. On scroll, when document is scrolled, you can this event will be triggered. When on unload, when the document has unloaded, suppose when the documents get unloaded from the frame, you will get the on unload event triggered. Validating forms. Okay, validating forms means it is like a pre-validation. Whatever the form you have, user has entered the information and you want to pre-validate all those information. Writing a code pre-validate forms on the client side will reduce the number of incorrect submission, thereby reducing the server load. There are number of common validation activities, including email validation, number validation, and data validation. So first thing is, why we want to do the validation. We don't want to get any incorrect data. Okay, data as per your requirement should be submitted. And when incorrect data is submitted, it will cause further problems. So that is why you want to do the validation. Whatever the form you have created based on your application, there might be number fields, there might be email, there might be some kind of a text, and there might be some kind of a data with a particular pattern. Let's say your USN, it comes with a particular pattern. You can check that particular pattern is user is given in the same pattern or not. Using regular expression, we can validate that. All those things can be validated, and all this validation can be done on the client side. We are not sending any kind of a data to the server. On the client side itself, using the JavaScript, we can do the validation, make sure that all the data is correct. Upon all the data is correct, we can do the submission. This is example, a simple validation script to check for empty fields, whether the fields are empty or not. This will check it. So we are using the form object here. I'm getting the form object which has the ID login form, and on that object, on submit is equal to, I'm calling a anonymous function passing the element. Once we have inside the function a field value, a variable, document dot get element ID username. So I have a one element in the form which has the ID called username, and I'm getting its value, dot value, that is stored in field value. Now I am checking if a field value is null or it is empty. So either case, whether it is null or empty, what I will do, I will generate a message alert, you must enter a username, right? So if the field is empty, we stop it from the submission. If you want to ensure a checkbox is ticked, use the code like below. This is another example whether some checkbox is ticked or not. Normally for license agreement, you want user to check that checkbox so that you agree for the whatever the license agreement is there. How to implement that? Variable input field is equal to document dot get element by ID whose ID is license. So this element is nothing but the checkbox which has the ID license. Once you get that value, once you get that object, then you will say input field. This is the input field dot type equal to checkbox. So you are making sure that element is a checkbox. Then if it is true, if input field dot checked, so this object dot checked is a property which has a value of true or false. If it is checked, it is true. If it is not, it is false. If it is true, you will take certain kind of action. If it is a false, you will take a certain kind of action, saying that it must be, you must agree to the licensing agreement. Whatever the messages you want to put, you can do that. Validating a number validation. This is, you have written a function is numeric. You are going to check particular data is a number or not. How to do that? Return. So this exclamation sign is like it is not. Okay. Whatever value you are going to get here, it is going to complement that. If it is true, it will make it as false. If it is false, it will make it as a true. Is not a number. Is nan is not a number. That is the function available with the JavaScript. And you will parse float. This is another function. You will, whatever the content you have, you are going to pass it to this. If this is not a number, then it will result as a true. Then what you will return? You will return false. Because why? Is numeric? False. That is how you will do. Is finite? If this is answer is true, you are going to return that particular value, and you are checking both. It is not a number, complementing that, and is finite. You are checking both. If both are true, then answer is true. Otherwise, it is false. Okay. We can do the validation I told you before using regular expressions also. Suppose particular input USN, it has a few characters, few numbers. Okay, that combination is there. You can use the regular expression, and you make sure that whatever the value that is user is entering, it is as per the that particular regular expression. Submitting a form using JavaScript requires having a node variable for the form element. Once the variable, say for example, is required, one can simply call the submit. Okay, so submit, either you can use the submit button or you can use the JavaScript. You are creating a one variable form example, and you are getting the form which has the ID login form, and on that form object you will call the submit function. So this will submit whatever the form is there. Okay, this is often done in conjunction with the prevent default on the on submit event. We know why the prevent default we have to use. That completes the first half of the third module.